Lawrence O'Donnell and the stakes coming up on the next ballot, he quite correctly mentions that it's not really just a matter of whose policy you agree with. It's whether or not you fundamentally agree with the concept of the people's vote choosing our leaders, also known as fundamentally being an American. Here he is.
But first, we're going to widen the focus to what is really at stake in the grand jury's criminal investigation of Donald Trump in Georgia and Jack Smith's two federal grand jury criminal investigations of Donald Trump for possible illegal conduct involving his possession of government documents and possible crimes leading up to and on January 6th. The import of the crimes being investigated in each of those criminal investigations is that any criminal conduct found in the Georgia investigation or in Jack Smith's January 6th investigation weighs heavily on the future of democracy in America. We have, for the last 2 years, been at a tragic political crossroads in this country now that one of the two major political parties no longer believes in democracy as a basic organizing principle of that political party. 139 Republican members of the House of Representatives voted to overturn the last presidential election. They voted to overturn the will of the people, the votes of the people, including the will of the people in their own states in some cases. Each of those Republican members of the House of Representatives were elected in the same election that they voted to overthrow only for the presidential portion of the ballots cast in their states. Everything else on those same ballots, including the vote totals for each of them in their own elections, they accepted as perfectly accurate. A majority of the Republican members of the House of Representatives obliterated any personal attachment to democracy in voting to overthrow the presidential election, and they cast those votes.
Just want to highlight this image right here. Would never, first of all, would never have gotten to that point if it was lefties trying to bust in. Those dudes right there, holding the line, pointing the guns, they wouldn't be hesitating to fire. They'd be emptying the clip, keeping the gun up, putting in a new clip, emptying another one. That's how they treat lefties. That is the difference. Long term, and Jesus God, I want to get this effing Trump guy tossed in prison so we can move on with building a country that functions properly. Long term, once we've dealt with Trump, once we've dealt with his lackeys, which is going to be a multi-year project, but fortunately, once we can ease into this other stuff as we go. What I want to do is work on correcting the major, fundamentally flawed parts of America, such as the right-leaning bias in law enforcement. Not just the judicial system. I mean the law enforcement arm. The guys with guns, in other words. They are both culturally, generally culturally coming from backgrounds where they're happier to do that. They're also conditioned to treat lefties like they are dangerous and right-wingers like they are friends. When in fact, time and time again, we see the exact opposite is true. With a radical leftist, at best, you have someone who is extremely motivated to help people. With a standard right-winger, you have somebody who is likely to full-on try to start up a new civil war. If it's in the form of voting for Donald Trump even, that is trying to start a new civil war, because there it is. The idea that it got to that point should be a lesson in and of itself for all of us at how much work we need to do to get this country functioning properly.
after the Capitol was attacked on January 6th. They cast those votes against democracy after they were in hiding, while the supporters of the man they wanted to be president were attacking the Capitol for him. 8 Republican senators also voted to overturn the presidential election. That number could go up in the House and in the Senate in the next election in 2024. And so in the next election, on election night, American democracy will once again be standing on the edge of disaster. Many Democrats will be running against many Republicans who have already voted against democracy and made it very clear that they do not believe that voters should be allowed to choose the winners of elections if the voters choose a Democrat. This was never true before. We had no reason to think that or say that before Donald Trump became president. And no one did think or say that about the Republican Party before Donald Trump became president.
Everybody hold up. That's not true. Lawrence O'Donnell, I respect this man quite a bit. I respect the journey he's been on from being painfully centrist to the point of wondering if the man was blind or willfully ignorant, to scooching left, or rather I should say scooching left, Lawrence O'Donnell. If the middle, if the middle's here at tie level, he's gone about here. But he's been on a journey, and he's been willing to examine his own beliefs, I think, with open eyes, and I congratulate him for that. But what he just said is not true. We talk about the difference between MAGA and the GOP, and amongst us, amongst people who are going to approach this seriously, yeah, it's worth examining the differences, and there are differences. But the differences that corporate media says exist, they're just not so. The GOP has always been anti-democracy. They have always, the conservatives of America have always been in favor of allowing less people to vote, and they have always been willing to use illegal means to accomplish that. Back before the party switch, when Democrats were the right-wingers, the KKK was a major part of their electoral strategy. Intimidating people at the polls were a major part of their electoral strategy. As late as the 80s, they were in legal trouble for using police officers, off-duty police officers, as poll watchers to intimidate people with guns and all. It was so bad, in fact, and Lawrence, I'm sorry, but we're gonna switch off you here and go to NPR. It was so bad, in fact, that there was a court order put in place that prevented them, the GOP, Republicans, it prevented them from having poll watchers. They weren't allowed to have them because they couldn't be trusted. Have a look. Have a gander here. And I will be attempting, there we are, to interact with a website with a new program. Okay. So this was written in 2018, this article, and it's about the consent decree that had prevented the GOP from posting poll watchers being lifted at the worst possible time, 2018. Okay, so I guess 2020 would have been the worst possible time, but still, a genuinely poorly timed moment for that consent decree to be lifted. A decades-old consent decree has been lifted against the Republican National Committee's so-called ballot security measures. It's a big victory in the Republican National Convention's efforts to monitor polling activity, and it's a sobering moment for activists who fear this could accelerate voter suppression, especially among minorities. Yeah, that's who they tend to lean From the transcript, 11 months before Election Day, a federal judge has given the Republican National Committee a big win. He has allowed a consent decree to expire that was in place since 1982. So, yeah, early 80s. The agreement prevented the RNC from carrying out what the party said they saw. These are liars. We should really be more comfortable emphasizing that. What the party said they saw as ballot security measures and what critics deemed as voter suppression, because it was. Rick Hassan of the University of California, Irvine, joins us now. He was yada, yada, yada. Okay. The Democrats accused the Republican National Committee of engaging in a number of activities which they said was voter suppression in violation of the Voting Rights Act and other civil rights laws. One thing the RNC was accused of was sending armed police officers who were off duty, so guys with guns, that's all that is. I don't care what their day job is, to polling places to patrol the polling places in minority areas. So they're sending guys with guns to patrol minority areas, to wander around, harassing minority voters. Rather than going to trial, and this is what is key, this is why I keep saying consent decree rather than court ruling. Rather than going to trial, the RNC agreed to settle the case, and it settled the case in what's called a consent decree, which means that the settlement between the parties was embodied in a court order, and if the RNC ever violated that order, they could be found in contempt. And so this was a powerful tool, misspelled there, that the Democrats have been able to use for the last few decades. One other thing. Why is it gone now? Well, so this summer, the guest says, as the Trump campaign started touting problems with voter fraud and trying to, remember, this is back in 2018. And the Republicans are trying to pretend like this guy was ever going to participate fairly in an election. Ridiculous. So this summer, as the Trump campaign started touting problems with voter fraud and trying to collect signatures of people who were going to engage in poll watching on Election Day, Democrats said the Republicans were violating the consent decree. The judge determined that whatever the Trump campaign might have done, it was done without the RNC's cooperation, and therefore the RNC didn't violate it, and the consent decree was allowed to die. So the whole thing was done away with simply because it was violated. By virtue of the fact that they chose to break the law, what happens to break a court order? What happens? What's the consequence? Well, obviously, if it's a Republican breaking the rule, then the rule gets changed. Trump was the leader of the Republican Party. To say that he was not doing this as a Republican is insane. The point is, folks, that there have always been Republicans whose primary goal was and remains to subvert democracy. And if you want to know what you can do about it, it's good that Lawrence O'Donnell is talking about how serious things are now. And it's a big part of the path to victory that we not go easy on MAGA and seditionists, people who are mask-off seditionists. But don't let people forget the lessons we have learned, because otherwise we're going to go right back to USA in the 1990s. In other words, allowing this fascism creep to happen again. We're going to let him get another bite at the apple. Somebody slightly more competent might be the fascist next time, and that'll be that. Mitch McConnell, in terms of policy, is everything Trump is. He's just better at wearing the mask, better at pretending like there's a political reasoning behind what he's doing, rather than distracting a rabid fan base so that he can rob us all. But it's the same thing. So don't let people whitewash GOP history. They have been against democracy for as long as I've been on this good earth. And they're dangerous, and we need to take that seriously. Probably. There we are. Hey. So, have a look at these comments in the poll. Oh, thank God. So we've got the poll was, which of these people do you consider to be a leftist? Jimmy Dore, Dave Rubin, or neither? 100% of people voted neither. Excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. That makes me happy because I was real concerned that people would be like, oh, I think Jimmy's kind of left. Good. All right. So I'm not taking crazy pills. Catherine Wolf says, hit the like button. Folks, yes, please. I appreciate that very much, Catherine. What they do is even more dangerous than being a blatant fascist. Yes, wholeheartedly agreed. Come on, peeps. Let's get the algorithm to push. Wicked. Hit the like button. Hell yeah. John Norris, do you think Trump is going to jail? And if so, for what? Also says, John Norris also says, I'm 44 and the Republicans, have hurt this country the most. Yeah, they have. They have been. I'm not saying Democrats are angels. I'm not even saying, you know what? Go as far left as you want. Take any lefty politician. None of them, in my opinion, are perfect either. But I'm not looking for perfect. I'm looking for people with a genuine interest in trying to make the country better. It's one of the reasons I do eventually want to do left versus left debates. Friendly, with the goal of promoting both channels, a handshake and smiles, but in actual politics, you should be disagreeing with people. That's almost fundamental to making it work, because otherwise, how do you get to the best, the best policy? But you're quite right. We're dealing with something entirely different in Republicans. They are consistently hurting the country, and their policies are not designed to do anything but that. It's to drain it. Now, you said, do you think Trump is going to jail, and if so, for what? I'm going to give you a little taste of Salty Saturday right now. You're going to get a bonus. And it's going to take me one moment, but I believe it'll be worth it. I said on a previous stream that I want to just do a marathon where I'm listing all of Trump's crimes that he has not seen consequences for yet. Just all of his crimes that we know of, at least since he started campaigning. How many do you think it is? Let me ask you this, John. How many crimes do you think there would be? 10, 15, 17, 22, 30? 56 is the answer, at least according to Citizens for Ethics, who counted them up, listed them out. I'll tell you this. I'll tell you what he is not going to be charged for, because the deadline to file charges has passed. He won't be charged for campaign finance crimes and the resulting cover-up when he used Michael Cohen in 2015 to make an unlawful individual contribution. Campaign finance crimes and cover-up when Donald J. Trump for President LLC did not report AMI's contribution. In other words, the Karen McDougal story. Bear in mind, Michael Cohen went to prison for this. Donald Trump won't. Deadline is passed. You want the good stuff, though? You want what I actually think he's going to... So my answer, though, despite that, my answer is yes, I think he's going to go to prison. Yeah, I think he is going to be convicted. I think he is going to be indicted. I think he is going to be tried and convicted. I can't fathom them actually sending a rich white ex-president to prison. I can't fathom that. But the crimes I do think he is going to get convicted for will be the obstruction of justice in regards to the documents, the classified documents, the election interference in 2020, and I worry that I'm wrong about this, but the optimist in me believes that the interference and attempt to bribe or extort Ukraine, President Zelensky, I think that is going to result in charges. Dawned on me said Trump will never get sent to jail. There will be no perp walk. Sorry, guys, just isn't happening. I hope you're wrong, and it would not surprise me if you're right. God, I hope it doesn't pan out that way. But we can put our thumb on the scale there by staying informed and riding the Justice Department's butt on this.